GT S vs BMW 440i and Jaguar XE S. Can it handle the heat? Even from the cabin of the BMW, handsome Estoril Blue, the attention slathered on the leader of our small convoy isn't difficult to see. It could be that car's own rich hue, which is suspiciously similar to Alfa's Competizione red, or the strangely discreet quad exhausts, or the fact that its prominent haunches flow rearwards to meet a tapering fastback and form an eye-pleasing Kamm-tail of sorts. All warrant a closer look. Or those enjoying the delights of the M4 westbound on this overcast weekday morn could simply be leaning over to make sure they've read the badge on the boot lid correctly. So we're all on the same page, it says Kia. By now you'll be aware of the stinger, seen here in top-spec, establishment baiting, eyebrow-raising GTS trim. You may have also heard that it's better than expected, with plenty of go and a chassis that's, not to beat around the bush, rather lively. But good enough to be regarded as a proper driver's car, one that might be considered an alternative to the likes of BMW's 440i M Sport and the Jaguar XE S? Surely not. It pays to be open-minded, though, and a short while later the Stinger's respectably heavy key fob is in hand. Climb aboard and it isn't the elegant expanse of its interior that surprises most. Neither is it the high, wide transmission tunnel, with its Audi-style gear lever, nor the porthole-style air vents, Mercedes, or the dash-top infotainment system, BMW. It's actually the driving position, which sinks deep enough for your eye line to skim the top of the wraparound dash. Plenty of adjustability in the steering column then allows you to set the firmly padded steering wheel, with its satisfying narrow girth, close to your chest, in turn extending an invitation for your legs to stretch out and greet the pedals. All this comes as revelation because the relationship between a car's principal controls is an ergonomic maze in which experienced marks still get lost from time to time. That Kia has more or less nailed it straight off the bat bodes very well indeed. As does the Stinger's spec sheet, underscored as it is by one very attractive number, 40,495 pounds. Okay. There will be those for whom that seems a disturbingly substantial wedge to hand to a brand best known for its 7-year warranty, but just consider what it gets you. Nestled within the Stinger's vaguely piggish snout is a 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6 whose 365 bhp is delivered to the rear wheels through a paddle-shift-operated 8-speed torque converter built in-house and, how about this for intent, a mechanical limited-slip differential. That it will sprint to 62 miles per hour in a shade over 5 seconds and nudge 170 miles per hour flat out makes it suitably brisk. Suspension is by McPherson struts at the front with double wishbones at the rear end. In a first for Kia, there's adaptive damping. Braking comes courtesy of Brembo, while the variable ratio steering rack gets the same power assistance setup as Hyundai's terrifically precise i30N hot hatch. Mine stubbornly closed. The fact that neither of the other cars here gets a mechanical LSD and that the disparity in on-paper performance between the three is so small as to be irrelevant should set you straight. Its advantage Kia, particularly when you consider that its new flagship undercuts the BMW by 4,000 pounds and the striking Jag by double that. But how does it all translate to the road? Pretty damn well, in short. As we put chunks of West Berkshire between our convoy and the average speed camera hell behind us, this Kia quickly strikes a charming old-school balance between action and traction. Its 255-section rear rubber might appear a touch weedy underneath the coachwork of locomotive proportions, but Kia's restraint is to out-benefit the car's rear-driven characteristics permitted to come to the fore. To nobody's surprise, the morning's drizzle means burying the throttle at every opportunity is a fruitless approach. As if greasy tarmac wasn't enough, this engine develops peak torque at just 1,300 revolutions per minute, but it's not that kind of car anyway. Better to let your gaze wander up the road and manipulate the slightly soft suspension. Even sport mode takes a relaxed approach, to work the tires through corners, carefully guiding the car's substantial bow and conserving as much momentum as possible. It's satisfying rather than thrilling, enjoyable if a little supervisory, but you don't buy a car like the GTS for a white-knuckle ride. The mechanical setup, based on a modified Hyundai Genesis chassis, reflects this. The steering is well geared but not the most direct, and body control over this kind of tarmac is such that the Stinger will only tolerate being hustled. It will reward you for doing so, even communicating its intentions honestly just so long as your inputs remain deliberate and considered. This comes as a relief given the 1,780 kilograms curb weight, which does, alas, eventually tell. The car's body movements fall behind the road when things really ramp up, and the mass feels concentrated at both ends of the long chassis. That can be a nice problem to work around if you're greedy with the throttle, as the LSD ensures proceedings remain neat during moments of predictable, easygoing yaw, but the front axle often needs babying into corners with a firm application of those tremendous Brembo brakes. Limitations aside, though, this is some UK debut. Whatever the quoted figures specify, the Jaguar XE S feels similarly portly to the Kia. That said, it seems to hold a distinct traction advantage on these roads, even with the notably sharper response of its whining 375 bhp supercharged V6. This could be down to the 265 section Pirelli P0s, but is more likely because the suspension does a better job of checking body movements before they become problematic. Our test car is wearing what could just be the most curb-able wheels in existence, with tires that consequently resemble rubber bands, and yet it rides along these B roads with a poise and surety that the Kia, for all its barrel-chested composure, never really feels like matching. Straights obliterated, the Jag's all-aluminium platform then carves into bends beautifully, with a front end that feels appreciably more alert than that of its rival and which claws into the road surface with greater enthusiasm, even if there isn't a great deal of feedback through the weighty, slightly elastic steering. It's a car that urges you to chase the throttle and yet never feels unduly ragged. It's a brutal initial examination for the Stinger GTS, which doesn't flow like the XE S, very little does, and can't match its agility. Here's the thing, though, enough similarities exist between the pair that an XE S owner, forced to borrow a Stinger for weekend, may feel a tinge of remorse come Monday morning. Both do the GT thing well and both are deceptively quick, the Jag's 3.0-liter engine hitting harder, higher up in the rev range, but there are times when the simpler Korean car, developed at the Nürburgring, elicits the more palpable sense of fun. And so to the BMW. We attempted to get hold of the four-door Grand Coupe version for this test but had to settle for the 60 kilograms lighter coupe. Remarkably, it's the Stinger that makes shorter work these tricky roads than our stiffly sprung M Sport Spec 440i, which finds good pliancy but also demands a strong hand for the steering wheel, whose fat trim is prone to writhing through your palms over corrugations in the road. Occupying the last rung on the BMW ladder before you're in M4 territory, it sits at the opposite end of the sports saloon spectrum to the Kia, trading isolation from the road for closer acquaintance with it, warts and all. The payback is involvement. For 2017, BMW has tweaked the car's suspension geometry, damper rates and anti-roll bars, as well as the steering, all in the name of keener dynamics and increased feedback. The 440i simply has a different set of priorities to the other cars here, particularly